Is this going to be? All right. Hey, Facebook. And anybody else who's watching this on a replay, because of course we'll have it on YouTube as well, where you can find others of these Heart Conversations with Queen on YouTube at heartconversations.live. And today we are back with another Heart Conversation with my guest, Christy Farr. And if this is your first time joining us on Heart Conversations with Queen, this is where we come. We have conversations that can often be uncomfortable, dealing with societal ills or even personal feats, personal struggles. Today we're going to be talking about racism. Well, actually, it's even more than that. It's a question of humanity. It's a question for humanity. It's a question of our humanity. And that is, how do you know you're right? When it comes to the subject of racism, policing, and politics. Again, welcome. We show up here with no pretense. We show up just full of heart, willing to be transparent and have hard conversations. We do not prepare ahead of time because you at home do not get to prepare ahead of time. You run into neighbors, friends, family members, co-workers, and these things that are going on around us come up in conversation. Often we stutter ourselves through those conversations. And many of us stay silent because we just don't know what to say and we don't want to ruffle feathers or we don't want people to think of us in a certain way. So we show up here full of heart, transparent, having the conversations just like you have them at home, unprepared, but just sharing from the heart, right? And being open to listen to those who we are having conversations with. And that is our hope for you, is that you will have these hard conversations with your loved ones, with your neighbors, with your friends in such a way where you show up transparent, willing to learn, to expand how you think about things, and then willing to share how you think about things. Because just as important as expanding your mind to be influenced by other things so that you can possibly think differently, it's also important because as you share, you get to see yourself outside of you. When you're in that echo chamber inside of your own head, oftentimes with nothing to challenge whatever you're saying within that space, you end up in a going down a rabbit hole, convincing yourself of things that you wouldn't otherwise convince yourself of, narrowing your world and narrowing your vision. So as we jump into this conversation, just know that it's not easy for us. We don't even know each other well. We've only talked on these hard conversations.
That's true.
And the interesting thing about it is we've had several hard conversations. I only met her 10 minutes before our first hard conversation, and that was to get onto this platform to say hello. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for being willing to do this. And we've just been having hard conversations in front of you, not knowing what each other believe, how each other think, nothing. I learn about Christy on here as she learns about me. And so when we talk about the ultimate hard conversations, that's how it goes. You're at work speaking with people who you've not been at their dinner table. You may not know what their background is. You don't know what their affiliations are, what their beliefs are, and all of that. And that can be scary to have these kind of conversations with people where you're not guaranteed that they share your same worldview. But these conversations have to be had. We need them to be had in order for us, if you caught us yesterday, and if you didn't, you can watch the replay on my page, Hard Conversations with Queen. But when you look at that, you'll see, if you jump back to that one, you'll see where we talk about being human and what that means, like how important it is for us to make life the most important thing, sharing life, and that we need each other in order for any of us to survive. So today, talking about how do you know if you are right? I woke up this morning and that was my question. And so I knew I had a doctor's appointment. And I thought, oh, I have to put something out right quick because I don't know what time I'm gonna get home. And we have to have something to post so people even know we're having a hard conversation. So I made up the thumbnail right quick, posted it, tagged you, and went on my way, right? Just a few hours ago. And that was the question. It's like, how do we know we're right? Because as I look back at history, because everything I keep it in context of where we've been, where we are, and where we envision ourselves going. And so when I think about the people who are alive today, who were on the wrong side of history in the 60s and in the 50s, right? And they were on the wrong side of history. I'm like, where they at? Like, where are they? Who? Because you'd never hear anybody admitting that they were on the wrong side of history. They seem to speak in terms of always being in support of everyone being equal. But there were people who were saying, hey, you guys need to calm it down. You are not oppressed. There is nothing wrong here. You just need to get yourselves together. Stop rioting, stop marching, stop being disruptive, go get a job. All of these things. There's no racism. There's no this. There's no, right? There were a large number of people who found themselves on the wrong side of history. Now, as I look at it, as I speak with people, talk with people today, listen to people, watch what people post, I often play that game of which side do they sound more like from the 60s? Like, who would they have been in the 60s and in the 50s? Like, I play that game. With myself, I go, where do you think they would have fit in the 50s or 60s? Because we have writings from back then, so we can compare them. It's not like I have to really, we could compare them. And so I go, okay, who do they sound most like? Because I already know who was on the right side and wrong side of history from the 60s, right? So I can kind of guess what the outcome may be this time. But I'm sure that those people then thought they were right, thought they were standing for righteousness, right? Thought they were standing for justice and all of that. And the truth is, we only know when time and space gives us the ability to know. 2020, like we always have, time and space judges us. That's what judges. So only because let me tell you, there's plenty of time and space that judges me today, right?
Right.
I can look back and I go, oh Lord, right? I thought I was on something there, but no, I should have got off. So, so how do you know if you're right when it comes to racism, policing, and politics?
Well, I spend a lot less time thinking I'm right than I used to. I can tell you that much because I've learned, to just be a little more savvy in making assumptions. and that you can't put yourself in, as a white person, you can't put yourself in a Black person's shoes and imagine their experience, because you can't take off your white lens. You can't take off your white experience. You can't, even if you can have compassion or even maybe relate to someone else's experience because they've shared their story, and that you can maybe hear and listen and relate, but you can't. I made a lot of mistakes making assumptions about being right or about something being knowable to me. A few things come to mind. One is I spent a lot less time talking and a lot more time listening. And even if I have a lot of passion about something, I don't confuse my passion or my heat with accuracy or knowledge, because they're not always the same. And what I have started to do just this year is I've noticed a shift. It used to be I was always in the middle of like whatever white thing people were doing online, so like I would share the things, and I would be like doing all the things you would expect if you came to a white life coach's timeline in the middle of an uprising, right? And now, like when the moms marched, Wall of Moms, I woke up one morning, it might have even been a Monday, and my Facebook feed is filled with white people posting about the Wall of Moms and how they're weeping, and this is so moving to them. And I was like, And so my instinct there was like, give this thing a time of death, let's call it, because like it's only a matter of time before that implodes with politics and white people trying to do the right thing and then taking, power away from Black women or other people of color who are trying to do the thing they've been doing for years, right? We've seen this formula enough times that I was like, okay, I'll give it 10 days. And when I see that now and I feel a thing rise inside of me emotionally, I go into social media and I see what my Black people that I follow, Black women, I'd look and see what Queen Wheeler posted. I look and see what these other teachers are saying. And it gives me like the rest of the story. And I've started to be able to see, after several years of watching and learning, I've started to be able to see the problematic white wave of a reaction. And there's an example, there's this beautiful piece that's going around in Renaissance fair circles about somebody being the queen, and she's the queen at the Renaissance fair, and a Black man and his daughter are there, and this whole like Wakanda exchange, and like it's beautiful. It brought tears to my eyes to read it, and like thank you to for this movie bringing, like letting little girls and little Black boys like see themselves as royalty, right? And it's beautiful, but it's like a white woman's story about being moved. And every single person who shared it in my feed, I think 12 times the last time I saw it go around, was white. And I'm like, look at us centering ourselves in this story. So I don't know, again, like, right? I don't try to like, I don't know, I've tried to let go of my grip, my grip on right or wrong, but I'm just trying to learn and trying to measure my impulse to see what, like, oh, my impulse is, this is really beautiful, I should share it. And I'm like, is that the story we need to be circulating right now? Is that one helping the people who don't have power in the system? I don't know that it is, like, it's beautiful, it's helpful, like it's warm fuzzy, but is that really putting forward like, hey, pay attention to the correct thing, the thing that needs attention, pay to it? And a white woman's experience about this little girl finally feeling like she could be a queen or a princess because this movie doesn't feel like it's putting the attention in the right place, in the place where it can be most impactful. Those are the things that like 5 years ago I would have been like, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean? Right. Like, how is that right. That not helping? Like, that's so right. Sweet. Doesn't that move you? That little girl, she feels like she could be a queen.
Yeah. right?
Yeah.
Um, gosh, a couple things. As you were talking, that came up for me, and I'm in that same situation. Like, I ask myself the same thing. If you notice, I don't post much.
Yeah.
I do not post much at all because I have to ask myself the question, okay, is this distracting?
Mm.
Does it splinter attention? Um, does it really get to the as deep down into the depth of um, what it is that I want to say? Does it get down there enough? Does it get to the seed, close enough to the seed for me?
Mm.
And so I don't post much. It's unfortunate, man, because I'd be wanting to post. I'd be like, I need to be consistent. People want to hear, but I just can't go against that. Um, so I grapple with the same thing that you do, right? And then when I see people posting over and over again, especially if I see my community posting over and over again, and I see it on everybody's feed, I go, maybe I should be seeking to that, and what have you. But I still have to look at what my questions are to qualify. Okay, is this how I want to use my voice? Is
Mm.
this what needs to be heard? And oftentimes I'll look at it and think, well, if everybody's posting it, they don't need to hear that from me. What can I add to the conversation? That's my question to myself always, is what can I add to the conversation? Regurgitating is not necessarily helpful. Like, there are some things that, yes, I would definitely repost and regurgitate, and I don't consider it regurgitating. I just put that person up front, right? That
Right.
person's
Right.
voice up front. But I often question, what can I add to the conversation? I had a very interesting experience today after I posted what we were going to talk about, because I told you I hurried up and put it in there so that I can go to the doctor.
Right.
So I go to the doctor, brand new doctor. I've never been there before. It's a referral. And this doctor seems to see mostly older patients, at least today. Everyone that I saw in there were at least late 60s to late 70s or beyond. So I walk in the door, and there's one older white gentleman sitting there. And it seems like he was reading something, but he didn't look up at me. I knew he saw me, I knew he saw me come in, but he didn't make eye contact or anything like that. And so I go up, I check in, I sit down. While I was parking, another couple um, was parking. I didn't know they were going to come into the same place I was, but an older white couple. And so a couple minutes late, well, because it took them a little bit to get up there, but a couple minutes later, they also walked in. And then all of a sudden, I started hearing this noise, and I was wondering, like, where is that coming from? So I look up at the TV. Well, the TV, they just had some picture slides going. And I'm wondering, where is this noise coming from? And I hope, like, is the doctor playing this? Well, the older gentleman that was sitting there when I walked in decided that, I guess, he wanted us all to hear some things from a news feed that was basically, the message was that these marches are um, out of hand, and that there needs to be some police control, and that states are not taking that seriously. They're trying to put it on to the president, which that is laughable. We need to control the. So it was a whole, and I mean loud, blasting loud. Of course, it was blasting loud. That's why I was looking around, like, where is this coming from, and why would they be playing, right? And then after it all played, of course, he turned it off, and then he he got up and asked them something, and he went to leave. And he looked at the white couple and said, "Hey, how are you? How you doing today?" Right? Like he he like it was like he both like he wanted everybody to understand who he was talking to, that he was like his voice was so loud, right? Like he made sure that everybody, I was the only one in there, by the way, besides them. And then he walks out. So, okay. I go back to the into the my doctor's appointment. And as I'm coming out, there's an older white lady sitting out. And so I come out and she looks up and she goes, "Oh, one day I'm gonna do that to myself too. Oh, I like your hair. I mean, yeah, I like your hair." So I just smile and I go to the restroom. I come out the restroom, knock back on the doctor's door to hand them my input. And then I turn around to get ready to leave, but I'm not sure if I should check out or not. So I stand there for a second and nobody's saying anything. They're both on the phone. So I figure, hey, they'll call me if they need me. So I go to walk out and the lady says, "Oh, excuse me." And I turn and I say yes. And she says, can I pray with you? And I say, she said, "No, can I pray for you?" And I said, "Yeah." So I sit down and she's over me and she's, "Can I touch you?" She touches my shoulder and she begins, and then she says, yeah, I just want to pray for you. And I can tell you're a sister in Christ, right? And I go, "Yeah." Now, mind you, she doesn't know what any of my answers mean. She don't know how I define any of that. And she goes to praying and praying and praying and praying and praying, right? So the whole time I'm thinking to myself, now I'm receiving the prayer because I'm what I'm doing is I'm tapping into her humanity, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm telling myself her intentions are well. Um, but I am listening to make sure she ain't, speaking nothing crazy over me. Then I would have had to say something. But and I'm thinking to myself, this she's at the doctor, she's older. I don't want to give her a horrible experience.
Oh.
I don't want her like because of the intentions of her. I didn't want to give her a horrible experience. I didn't want her to be embarrassed in front of the people who work there because they could see, and some of them were walking back and forth. And I took all of that into account, right? Even when she asked me, I took all of that into account. And that's why I said yes, because I didn't want her day to go badly. And this is early in the day. This is this morning. I didn't want her day to go badly. I didn't want her crushed. I didn't want, right? This wasn't the time and space to have the kind of conversation I would need to be able to have with her so that she could understand in a way that did not leave her deflated or defeated. Right. So I had to take all of that into consideration. So on my way out the door, as I was going to my car, I'm like, man, this is like, I just had these two. I send you the the question, the topic of our conversations. Then I go in and have these two experiences in one place, right? And and I began to think to myself all of the things that really happened in those moments. Because on the surface, you can breeze through all of that, but all the things that actually happened in those moments. the man who decided to play his little stuff all loud to ensure that I heard it was sending me a clear message.
Hmm.
And as I sat there, could I have said something? Yes. But what I understood in that moment is, number one, what I was there for. I was there to see the doctor, and I didn't need that disrupted, right?
Yeah.
And number two, that everyone around me was comfortable.
Hmm.
So that let me know I didn't have an ally in the building. Okay. I didn't have an ally. Everyone around me was comfortable and white. So I didn't have an ally in the building or in that space. And I had to choose because I was there for one purpose. So I
Right.
chose the purpose for which I was there. This is just another hassle of being Black in this type of environment, right? Just another hassle, which we know how to deal with hassles. When I came out and dealing with the older white woman, I had, again, for her to, number one, feel like it was okay to say, oh, I'm going to do that to myself, or right? So for number one, I'm like, okay, for now, mind you, traditionally, white women don't shave their heads.
Right.
Traditionally, if you see a white woman and she does not have hair, first of all, it's usually covered, unless you're an artist that's trying to make a statement, that is usually covered. But it often signifies sickness,
Mm-hmm.
cancer, things like that. So those were the lenses through which she saw me, a Black woman. And you just mentioned the movie Wakanda, where all of the Black women in that movie had shaved heads.
Yeah.
Right? But obviously she hasn't been exposed to that. So she doesn't know, is that part of my culture? Is it part of my belief system? What is it? Or am I sick? Now, I could hear through her prayer what she thought it was. Right? She thought I was sick. So she thought she was doing something for me and doing right. So she thought she made these assumptions, but not only did she make the assumption, but she also had to think herself in some way having something worthy to give me that I didn't have myself.
Right. She thought herself important enough that you needed that from her.
That I needed it from her.
It wasn't even enough to pray silently as you left the room.
Right.
She needed to assault you with her prayer.
So
she needed to heal you with her prayer.
Yes. And what that spoke to me is how we've been conditioned that if you could utilize God, especially a superior one,
Mm-hmm.
it gives you a sense of supremacy that gives you a courage that you otherwise, that's not courage. It justifies your assuming things about people and infringing on people
Mm-hmm.
in a different way.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is this: the issue with that was not that she wanted to pray for me and not that she asked me to pray for me or what have you, because that's fine if that's part of your thing, right? The issue is when you feel like that gives you the right to not have to have the hard conversation that will give you the information that you need to know where you end and where the other person begins.
Right. Boundaries.
She didn't have to have the conversation of, may I ask you why you don't have any hair?
Yeah.
Or before you even get to that, may I ask you a personal question?
Right.
Or before you even get to that, what is your name?
Mm.
Or before you even get to that, hello, how are you?
Mm-hmm.
See how many things she was able to jump over because of her sense of having something supreme that justified her jumping over connecting with another human.
Yeah.
Because she felt like she was going to a superior connection, which is, let me pray for you. Let me pray over you.
Mm-hmm.
And so she didn't have to be down here with humans that have to engage with each other in hard conversations to say, look, I just want to connect with you.
Mm-hmm.
How are you? What is your name? I'm not sure. I just saw that you didn't have any hair. Usually, in my world, that signifies this. And I wasn't sure if that's what it means for you. And if it did, I just want you to know that I care about what you're going through. I want you to know that my heart goes out to you, right? She didn't have to have those hard conversations because she had something superior.
Mm-hmm.
So she could just make herself feel good about, and she gonna go, trust me, she going to tell her church community and her and sister so-and-so and her pastor about praying over this poor lady today.
Mm-hmm.
And how she was led by the Lord and how she was a servant of God. She's going to go do that, not realizing she missed the actual, if I was Jesus, which I am.
Yes.
Archetype, same thing, the archetype. Jesus is an archetype. I am just like you are. We are all aspiring to the archetypes of goodness, right? Of oneness. Then she missed them. She couldn't see him.
Mm-mm.
She thought he needed prayer.
Right.
She thought she could heal him.
Mm-hmm.
That she needed to reach out to whatever, right? So missed the whole opportunity. Yeah. And so, but she believes that she's right. She was right today. She was righteous today.
Oh, yeah.
Now, if she had the ability to see time and space in this video, she would see clearly or clearer, or she'd be offended, one or the other. I don't know. Probably offended. Yeah. But, but she would have the opportunity to see clearer, right? Mm-hmm. Because time and space will allow her to do that and watching this. But because I didn't, because that was not the time or the space to have that conversation, she's going to go on. And now she's strengthened. Mm-hmm. Right? She's strengthened in what she believes is right. And now she probably she's going to hit about 5 more people today. Yeah. Right? But because of people like me who have to, in that moment, choose.
Right.
What am I here for? How can I just make it right? What am I here for? And how would this impact my ability to function? And then not only that, and what am I here for as far as human connection? What do I want this lady to experience of me? How do I want her, right? But when you're thinking that way, I'm thinking when I'm thinking that way, but they're not thinking that way back to me, right? I don't think that was even in her awareness. It wasn't about what experience did she want me to have today. I want that lady to have an experience today. I don't want, did she what, she didn't think that could be embarrassing for me in the
Right.
middle of somewhere, right? But I was thinking about her embarrassment. I don't want her to be embarrassed.
Right.
I don't want to cause a scene for her. I don't want
Mm.
her to experience somebody um, giving her pushback and she don't know who I am. And I don't know what her view of the world is, and she may get scared, right? I don't know what her view of the world is because things are going on out here right now. Will I? So I'm thinking about all of that. This lady, she good today. She feel good about herself today, right?
Well, she does. And I think that, I spent a lot of time over the last 11 years talking about people and their somewhat abusive, at times abusive behavior. We talk a lot about codependency. We talk a lot about boundaries, and not as much across race as of late, but like that feels abusive to me. And as a non-Christian woman, especially as a woman who's married to a woman, like I'm a prime target for being prayed for. And there is like no way that that woman would stop me, head shaved or not, in that office and ask to lay hands on me and pray for me and my poor broken soul. And the fact that she felt entitled turns my stomach. But what really turns my stomach is that you are having to maneuver the world as not just an individual, but as a representation of your entire race. And that you are tiptoeing around and not really in a position to, like, that, if you say no to her, it's going to make a scene. It's going to make a decision for her about what Black women do, and you try to give them God. Like there's a whole different storyline that unravels depending on whether you tolerate that, what feels like abuse to me,
I'm gonna
or
tell you
not.
though, if I was just thinking as a Black woman, her day would have been different.
Well, and I
Her day,
kind of wish
her
it had
day,
been different.
her day would have been different. I'm gonna tell you straight up, her day would have been different.
Right.
If I would not have been able to tap into the humanity, that lady's day would have been different. You see how everything just changed just then when I'm thinking, because I can shift now. Like
Right.
I can do that.
Because you're in a moment where it's safe to be pissed about it. Yeah.
I had to intentionally.
Right.
Like that's what I was doing. I was centering myself. I was tapping into the humanity so that I could go beyond all of that in order to allow this lady to just be, right? But also knowing that it is not likely that she would do the same for me, because she didn't, first of all, right? But I knew that it wasn't likely that she would. However, it was necessary for me too. Now, I'm not going to try to make it seem like that would have been the outcome with every situation. Because the truth is, it wouldn't be the outcome with every situation. But I have to be able to gauge that with every situation. Now, her age had a lot to do with it, right? I'm not willing to bring certain things on myself to make a point at all when it comes to certain, right? My culture overall, but African tradition, like they don't play it, the respect of elders, even ignorant ones, really plays and so her age did have something to do with it. Now, mind you, also because we're in 2020, I don't know what it would have been like if we were, say, in 2040. But because we're in 2020, and I'm thinking her age and the era that she came up in, that all, like, girl, all of this was playing for me. Like it wasn't just an easy, right? I had to take her age, her race, her sex, her location in the United States, all of that. I took all of that into account in the split second in order to decide, okay, this is where. Now, I'm not getting ready to pretend that if she was, say, a 35-year-old, that the conversation would have went the same.
Yeah.
And definitely not if she was like a 20-something-year-old, because I look at, okay, now we in 2020. We've been going through this a long time.
No excuses. Yeah.
Yeah. So I won't pretend, right? Because I'm definitely not advocating for. I am advocating to always tap into your humanity and the humanity of the other. I always advocate that. What I'm not advocating is to pretend like part of tapping into humanity doesn't come with speaking the things that need to be spoken in the time they need to be spoken. Right? So I am not advocating for Black people to just be bystanders to their own life and to allow things that don't have to be allowed. But I'm sure that, if a Black person is listening to this, they understand that it is necessary to be strategic and wise, because you got to make it home. You got to be able to keep your doctors. You got to be able to keep your dentist. You got to be able to keep you right. You got to be able to provide for your family, all of those things. And so we have to be strategic. Remember, 76% white, 13% Black, which means you mess that up, that's 76%. Like anybody who offends 76% of their business is out of business, right? That means most of your major things, you're going to have to encounter something or somebody like this. So if you want to continue to be able to work and eat and shop and all of that kind of stuff until we have a place or space where we don't have to encounter it, but that's not today.
Well, it's interesting because what it brings up for me is people who are in complicated relationships. A lot of my white clients have complicated relationships with their family members, and so it's this maneuvering of potentially inappropriate behavior and like, how do we tolerate maybe some sort of racist remark like the China virus instead of COVID-19. And how do I just like never speak to my parents again if that happens? And so these clients are like trying to negotiate, like, how do I ask my parents to go by these rules? And like in the white world, we really only have to do that with family or men in a professional environment or even in a romantic relationship. So as women, we really only have to take that kind of crap from our families. And we don't have to, but maybe choose to in order to stay safe and secure. And then we have to do that with men. So like, I'm kind of mind blown in this moment that the ways that I've tolerated bullshit behavior, frankly, from someone because they had more power, because they were my male boss, or they were, in some way, the person who makes more money in my marriage, whatever. And that you're having to do that same kind of maneuvering with a stranger in the world because she's white and you're Black. Like as a white person, as a white woman, I only have to do that with men and family. I can walk away from anybody else that I want to and just be like, do not touch me. And you have to do that with 76% of the people.
Right.
Plus the men, because Black men have more power in the structure than Black women. Like that's everybody. And if you add elders, then you have like, what, 2% of the people?
Now, for all y'all old folks out there, don't think it's every elder. I remember my mother, as she was getting older, she was like, well, when you get older, you can do whatever you want to, and ain't nobody gonna do that. It's like, all right, you can try it if you want to. Don't be calling me from jail. Try it if you want to. That ain't.
Yeah.
No. It was just it was just very interesting to me, though, how I had those two very different but same. Can you see that? Like, even though it seemed like they were different experiences, they were the same experience. They just used different methods.
Well, but you did this thing that she wouldn't do. So she's in a moment where she thinks you could actually appreciate and use prayer if you're sick, right? But she did not consider your humanity. Right. So in this moment that you maybe don't want to have this experience with her, and you tap into what frankly some will call a coping mechanism to make it tolerable, of really holding her humanity and her flawed humanity, her deeply flawed humanity. But like, she wasn't doing the same for you. No. She was not treating you like a human being.
And neither one of them did. The man who was playing the whole thing, nor her. Again, it just used two different, and that's why I say, how do you know if you're wrong? That is often my thought for white people who I see grappling with this subject of racism, because those who feel, I see more in those who feel that they have the superior morality, really looking at themselves as being right when doing that experience that I expressed to you with the man and the woman. They were the same experience. They just used two different tools.
Right.
They used one used a secular tool and the other used a religious tool.
Right.
But they both had the same effect. They both used the same reasoning and they both did the same thing. Yet both of them think they are right, and both of them would think themselves different than each other. And I'm quite sure that the lady would have been appalled at that man if she had been in there when he did that. I'm quite sure that she would have presented herself as an ally. Mm-hmm. Like, don't do that. This Black lady is here. Why would you? Right? Mm-hmm. She would have presented herself as an ally. Yet she did the same thing that he did. She was in the same space and place here that he was. She just uses a different tool, and she's blinded to that. So I look at both of them and I think, how do you know that you're right? Like, what tools are you using to check yourself?
Well, I mean, it begs the question, are they? Because it sounds like they're not even wondering if they're right.
Right.
I had a client who asked me just a week ago, she said, how do I know if, right.
They know. They're not even questioning.
No. Most people who are asking the question aren't the thing they're afraid that they are being. Or at least you open the door to what we talked about yesterday of just being like less effective of a soldier in this war. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. If you are not assuming that what's in your head is the right thing. Right. You are less able to be weaponized.
Yeah. Yeah. And neither one of them are asking, how do I know I'm right? And that has been, I'm going to tell you, that has been one of the most impactful questions that I've ever adopted for myself.
Yeah.
And when and it was because one of the major things in my life was challenged and taken away, not by people, but by my own inner relationship with myself and with deity. And it shook me, and I thought, well, I was so sure about that. So if I was wrong about that, what else could I possibly be wrong about? Because I thought that was a sure, like a easy sure, right?
Yeah.
And from that time, I started asking myself, how do I know I'm right about that?
Yeah.
And I'm be honest with you, I haven't really found anything that I could say I am right about that. I could say that I'm right about what I know myself to be in this moment. I'm right about thinking that that's what I know myself to be, but I can't say that I'm right, that I judged it correctly and that I've seen the full picture of it or what have you. I can say that I know I'm right about the part of truth that I feel like I just got a hold of, but I can't say that it's absolutely true because of all of the truth that I'm not able to get a hold of. And any truth looks like a lie when it's absent of the full truth,
Mm.
right? It becomes a lie. And so there, I don't like, I wake up and go to sleep saying this can all be bullshit. Like, I really don't know, right? I don't. And and then I wake up every morning and I try to know what I can know. And then I go to bed every night and go, this could all be bullshit. I really don't know. Right.
Right.
Um, and the more that I know, the more that I realize I don't know. Right. So it's
Yeah.
just a constant where, and what I told the ladies in the 31-day racism rehab, as they were explaining how they were feeling in their experience, I said, look, honey, welcome to the club. That's my norm. I
Yeah.
said, but that's what bridges feel like. Most of
Mm-hmm.
a bridge is suspended in air.
Right. Right.
Most of a bridge is suspended in air. And you're going from one end to another, one end to another. Those are people who can connect,
Yeah.
connect, connect, bring people from one place to another, right? Carry things from one place to another. But most of me is suspended in air. And the anchors that I do have, right, are completely in self for sure,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
But most of me is suspended in air. So when people know things so absolutely, and it seems like we're in a world now that people know things absolutely, it makes me nervous and it makes
Yeah.
me
Yeah.
hopeless. It
Yeah.
makes me hopeless when people
Mm-hmm.
know, when they got the answers, when they swear that they understand this stuff. Because
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I eat and sleep this stuff almost, and I don't understand a damn thing. So when you know and you so sure,
Mm-hmm.
you make me nervous. I think you're one of the soldiers that you're talking about.
Yeah.
It's weaponized and don't know you're a soldier.
Yeah. I just know everything is far more complicated than I used to think that it was. And we had a dinner with Gianni, and I had dinner with our son and his partner, and we were talking about the complicated situation with the unsheltered folks here and some violence that was taking place in the camps that had been established, and some, just sort of this intersection of um, a real crisis and then a human trafficking crisis, and like how all these things come together. And Erin just sat there for a second and she said, both of these things can be true. Both of these things can be true. And I was like, what? And she said, both of these things can be true. That it can be true that we have a crisis of people not having shelters in our society, and that needs to be solved and it needs to be fixed. And that sometimes there's a crisis within that crisis that is, maybe taking advantage of the people who are in that crisis. And that, that there is no one or the other. It's not that it is true or that it is, that both of these things can be true. And I was like, that's my 2020, kind of awakening, is like, this is complicated and
Yes.
all of these things can be true.
Yes. And it seems that that's one of the hardest things um, hardest things for people to swallow. I often say that if I don't say that at least 10 times a week
Yeah.
to my clients, I'm like, it's not an either or, it's an and.
Mm-hmm.
You're having a hard time and you can't stand your partner or they lie to you and you enjoy their company. Like,
Yeah.
wait, it's an and they're a great father.
Right.
And they're
Nobody's all
right.
bad. Nobody's all good. Yes.
Yeah. So it's hard to swallow the and as I see the conversations around racism, policing, and politics, there's no and in there. There's either or.
Mm-hmm.
There's no and.
Mm-hmm. I saw
There
one
are
today, the boss guy at Chick-fil-A who has been long boycotted by my community, queer people, because of their donations to anti-LGBT, IA stuff. Long time, very committed to being anti-gay. And I guess this guy said something about how Christians should step up and get behind Black Lives Matter. And the comments below it were like all these people going like what do we do here? That it is like, does he hate gay people so much that he's gonna finally we have somebody who's like, okay, so we don't like gay people, but we're gonna bring the Black people in close. And I was like, maybe it's 2020. It's been a rough 400 years for you guys. Maybe we should just let you have this one. Like maybe the white queer folks can just like let you have the Chick-fil-A guys support. I don't know. But it's the same thing of just like, this is messy. It's so messy.
It is.
And as much as
you just brought up a whole nother can of worms too.
I know.
You just brought up a whole nother can of worms,
yeah.
which I think we touched on it in our other hard conversations in June about all of the marches and all of that stuff, and everybody benefits except Black people.
Right.
Like Black people will get like thrown a bone, and everyone else starts getting their rights and starts getting
and
it's like, come on. And then the conversation always shifts away.
Right.
And then we never get to Black people. It's one of those things. And then when you get to Black people, then it starts all over again.
Right.
And then goes back into what we were talking about at the top of the hour, where I have to consciously ask myself, okay, is this going to take away from the actual conversation of Black people? Because I don't want to be a part of that. Because if we look through history, we see all of the movements that did that. Every time a Black movement started, women's suffrage came in and hijacked it. When Black women were the ones who started that within the Black movement, because they were like, well, wait a minute, we're in this Black movement and we're still being treated, so we're like even beneath that. So now we need to march for women as well. And then white women were like, oh, well, if they could get that, well, we want it too, right? And so hijacked, right? Yeah. So it's just a constant, every time there's some traction, it gets, and then it never gets back to Black people. Anytime something is just about the Black plight, it doesn't work, right? No. It just, things get bad. People start dying. People start crying. It just goes really, really left, as if that is the worst thing that can happen in the world, is that Black people be recognized or acknowledged as being human. And it sounds crazy coming out of my mouth, but that's what the track record has shown.
It's like we're saying anything but that.
Yeah.
Anything but equality, anything but fixing what's been broken here. We'll come all the way up to this line, and then we're going to do this consolation thing, and then, okay, good. Yeah.
Just even when you talk about the guy at Chick-fil-A talking about we need to get behind Black Lives Matter, there's nothing in my mind that makes me believe that that's about anything but business. Because it's impossible to say Black Lives Matter without including everybody.
Right.
It is impossible.
That's what somebody said. It's like everybody but the LGBTQIA people, right?
It's impossible.
All the Black straight people. Cis people. Yeah.
It's impossible to say Black Lives Matter without including everybody. You cannot, in this country with our history, You cannot make me believe that you're willing to give up your racism before
Right.
you're willing to give up your no. You cannot make me believe that. So I can't see it being about anything but business. Yeah, anything but business. And I wouldn't see it any other way but business. And I'm gonna tell you something. I don't know many Black people. I'm sure there are some.
Yeah.
But I don't know many Black people who would take that, except for those who have been brainwashed using religion to see through the white lens, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm gonna tell you something, I wouldn't take it. And the reason why I wouldn't take it is because unless it's for all, I know that it's for nobody.
Right.
So if you come to me and say, hey, I'll get behind Black lives, but I can't be with LG. But first of all, now you hitting my immediate family and my extended family. So we got a problem there. But anyway, I digress. Because I will fight for my kids, and you're hitting on my kids. And so, so then my daughter, she wouldn't even be included, basically.
Yeah.
That's what they would be telling me, right? We're for Black lives. But what I know is if they come for one of us, they come for all of us.
Right.
If they can get 1 inch, they'll take them out. That's what I know. If one person is not free, none of us are free. None of us are safe. If one person could be discriminated against for who they are, and I'm not talking about by discriminated against because of behaviors, right? And sexuality is not a behavior, okay?
It's for who we are.
Right.
Right.
I'm talking about behavior such as people who like to eat crayons, like stuff like that,
right.
or pedophiles, people who like to, stuff like that. People who like to kill people who like to harm people. Let's blanket it with that. People who feel whatever it is that they believe themselves to be, would require for another person to be hurt. That's a good way to put it, right?
Right.
If unless whatever you consider yourself to be requires that you hurt another person, that you infringe upon the person of another person, that person's will is infringed upon, autonomy is infringed upon, their thoughts are infringed upon, all that kind of stuff, then we got a problem.
Right.
But no, if you're going to come tell me, oh, we'll be with Black Lives Matter, but we're going, but this set of people can't get in, this set of, no, then I don't believe you. I just don't believe you. Because in order for you to really be against a racist system and racism, you have to dig deep into your humanity, into a pool where every single person who is breathing is a worthy, valuable human.
Right.
Because that's the kind of people it's going to take.
Well, and that's this person circled exactly back to the beginning. This is about valuing life.
That's it.
All life.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. So I wouldn't fall for that one. No, I know y'all ain't. I know your community not falling for it.
We've been mad so long at them. I don't know what they would have to do to get us to eat there, but we are mad.
Well, that's a system.
Mm-hmm. There's still plenty of people eating there.
They got a lot of fans, so I know a lot of people are going to be mad at this conference, but that's a system.
Right.
That's a system.
Like they just ran the numbers. They said 76%, and then whatever the portion out of, my community and all the trans folks, and they were like, there's still plenty of people to eat our chicken.
Yeah. But that's a system there. That's not just a business. That's a system.
Yeah.
That's a system. All of the signs point to system.
Well, it's a business, just like I was just talking yesterday about being a soldier in an unknown, unrealizing, now realizing I'm a soldier in a war that I didn't even sign up to be in. Mm-hmm. That's a business that's a part of this battle. Like that, there are so many businesses that are being enlisted, and some willingly and some not. But
I wouldn't say
like capitalism.
Okay,
totally
I'm going to say this real quick, and then we're going to get off. I'm going to say this real quick. I wouldn't necessarily say it that way. I think I would think of the way I think of it is an example of how racism is carried into system, how it births things, how the system births itself into society.
Yes, I agree.
How it births itself, and so
Yes.
it births itself through a police system. It births
Yes.
itself into a business system. It births itself into right.
Right.
And I think that's a good way of saying how it becomes systemic. What that
Right.
means.
That is exactly right.
It bursts.
It's not just in individuals, it's in the systems and the institutions within the system. And it feeds itself when those businesses then give their money back to the system. Like it's yeah.
Yeah.
It's living and breathing.
It bursts itself. And there's so many layers on there we can have a whole nother conversation on, because
we should do this again.
Because there's some layers in that particular system, and how it was able to birth itself in such a way into actual business, which is scary to me. It's, when I use scary, I mean, I'm over here like, but which is scary to me, because that is an example of how it can birth itself into business when we think of ourselves as a free trade system. Yes. But what if racism bursts itself into businesses, and the businesses that it bursts it, which we already know that that's in place, y'all. This is not theoretical.
Yeah.
But as it does, the effects that can have on society. So now we have governmental systems, and then we have business systems. Mm-hmm. And why do you think people fight against huge companies, right? Buying up each other? Because you imagine if there were no checks and balances of what our country would look like even more than what it does now. So anyway, all right, that was a good conversation. Thank you so much for the conversation. Look, y'all, we get into acting like we on the phone, not really like we got y'all sitting there
held hostage.
Right, held hostage. Thank you so much, Christy, for today. We will be back for another one at some point in time.
Yes.
I'll have to get back on, see what your schedule is so that we can do this again. Every time we do it, we have so much fun that it's like, oh, let's do it again. But thank you for joining us today. And we will be back when we come back.
Can I say one thing?
Yes.
You have not promoted it nearly enough. And so I want to just say that Queen is doing her racism rehab for white women, and it begins again when?
Tomorrow.
So where will we get that link?
All right. So I have the link the link is in the chat section of this video, as well as on Hard Conversations with Queen, the Facebook page, Hard Conversations with Queen.
Okay.
And you can always email me if you have questions at queen@queenwheeler.com, or messenger me on Facebook as well. Okay. Thank you for that. So 31-day racism rehab starting tomorrow. And it is for white women who, if this conversation interested you, then it's for you.
Yeah. It's what's after. I would keep telling people it's what's after book club.
Yes. And if you haven't joined the book club, don't just come right on the 31 days.
Come on in. Yeah, you don't need the book club, but it's what's after it.
Yeah. That's all you need. Then you'll know what books you want to read based off of what you discover about yourself. All right. Well, thank you. You enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much. And thank you, all of you who hung on here with us watching. We appreciate your time. We appreciate your attention, because we know that it is valuable. Keep having those hard conversations, not only with your family, friends, and coworkers, but first and foremost, keep having the hard conversations with yourself. Ask yourself, how do I know that I am right? Good question. All right. Bye, y'all.